Good afternoon, those who are in the room, those who are following us online. My name is Michal Karpíšek, and I'm Secretary-General of EURASHE. And I would like to welcome you at the EURASHE Restart Workshop, which will summarize or provide an overview of the potential of professional higher education contributing to recovery and resilience in Europe. And we are going through a restart in a number of dimensions. This is the first meeting after a long time where we can meet partially physically. I have to say that this is also the first experiment of EURASHE in hybrid setting, believe it or not, except some sort of small group meetings. So we are happy to learn as much as we have learned over the past 1.5 years. It's the restart of the agenda, and it's also restart of EURASHE, or the continuation of EURASHE in a new setting, because just a few minutes ago, the General Assembly appointed the new Secretary-General. So I am the Secretary-General, but you will hear the new Secretary-General in a while as well, John Edwards, and my congratulations to John. We have since May updated or changed the board of EURASHE, so there's also the potential to come up with a new agenda, and there's also a number of issues which are burning on the European policy level, reflecting the Commission's challenges and invitations, but reflecting also the overall developments and our own experience and the challenges which we face in the institutional level and students' life, I would say. That's probably something which matters for us the most. I will not take too much time. We will go through a few blocks. In the first one, the new president of EURASHE, about new since May, Armando Pires, will provide the overview of the new opportunities and the directions where EURASHE, as the political representation of professional higher education universities of applied sciences, can go over the next years. Then we will have reactions from some of our valuable partners, which we have been working for quite some time and to which we are really grateful for their support. And then John, as the new Secretary-General, still as the senior advisor in the agenda, John, will run the panel discussing with policymakers and experts and stakeholders what would be the recovery and resilience agenda in Europe, and Armando will close the issue. I can see in the agenda written that there will be drinks reception, but we are not restarting that far. So those who are online don't have to regret that they are not here with us. We will keep that for some other time. I will not keep it long, and I will invite Armando Pires, EURASHE President, to share the overview in a brief, focused presentation. Yeah.
Thank you, Michal. I don't know if I may sit. I will try at least. Okay, here I am.
We will see the comments in the chat.
Okay, so thank you all for being here and for participating in this workshop. So we call it a restart because we have the privilege of being in this room, restarting the face-to-face meetings. But at the same time, we know that this would be impossible for everybody. So our option was to have an hybrid meeting. So that's why I also welcome you all, also you in that are online connected to us. So the importance of this meeting, or the relevance about what we are going to discuss today, the thematic of the importance of PHE, the professional higher education, for the recovery and the resilience in Europe. This will involve a significant number of distinguished guests that represent important organizations in Europe. So I want to thank you all for being here. As you know, the core mission of professional higher education will always be to train highly skilled professionals through quality in higher education. And at EU level, EURASHE is proud to be part of the E4 group and to contribute in many different ways and collaborate with many different organizations. I will stress only the case of ECAR and also the ECAF to illustrate. PHE has also a crucial role to play in applied research, and we here we also call it user-oriented research and innovation. And the EURASHE will continue to support its members in developing applied research activities, trying to reach the levels of excellence and to participate more in European programs like the Horizon Europe, but mostly to link in a more effective way education and applied research, contributing with innovation for the recovery in Europe. One of the EURASHE's aims in the coming years is also to expand the number of professional doctorates as a bridge between education and applied research that can help drive innovation. Yet the argument that EURASHE needs to put forward clearly is that in most cases, education cannot be high quality and research cannot be excellent unless they contribute to society and to the economy. Furthermore, PHE has to be, and it is, open, flexible, and dynamic in order to contribute to a large range of policy priorities. Look, for example, how quick we needed to respond to the challenges brought about the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, more than ever, we cannot sit in our ivory towers, and this is an expression that we heard a lot, receiving public funding and not delivering an added value. Even before the pandemic, many politicians were questioning the value of supporting higher education institutions. While higher education institutions should become autonomous to organize themselves, and in fact this can help them to be innovative, they must respond to the demands of business and the society in terms of their results. With autonomy also comes responsibility, and we must fully recognize this. We must start asking ourselves not just what we are good at, but also what we are good for. For a professional higher education institution, the answer to this question should normally include its contribution to the place in which it is located. Professional higher education institutions are not just located in a region, they are of the region. They are also a gateway to the wider world, both for students and for companies. At our General Assembly this afternoon, we launched a review of the EURASHE strategic framework, both in terms of thematic priorities and also on how we serve our members. While the review is a bottom-up process, with all members being invited to join a task force, as president, and I think I can speak on behalf of the board, we believe that this strategy should be to help the European Commission deliver on its priorities. The challenge the Commission has given Europe is to rise to the challenge of the green and digital transitions we are going through. EURASHE members can do this, for instance, through embracing the EU's digital education plan and integrating green skills into all types of curricula. The Commission predicts that by 2025, opportunities will grow for high-skilled people, plus 21%, stagnated for medium skill levels, and decline for the low skill, minus 17%. Depending on the country and occupation, 25 to 45% of jobs will be subject to automation. Our members need to adapt to the characteristics of the fourth industrial revolution and provide the skills to make Europe competitive. EURASHE is committed to helping deliver the new skills agenda and the industrial strategy. Furthermore, our members can help Europe facing this challenge by involving all regions, from the highest performing economic centers to places on the periphery that are in risk of being left behind and are asking how Europe can help. EURASHE has members from a diverse range of regions, and we consider contributing to their development as part of our DNA. However, we need to do more, which is why UASIMAP, which is a project, the project EURASHE coordinates on assessing regional impact, is so important. We are starting now also with the process of complementing with a process of external review by an expert from the European Commission. Contribution to balanced economic growth will help developing an economy that works for the people. While EU policies and priorities may be made here in Brussels, our members are working on the ground across Europe. Our strategic review needs to consider how we strengthen the link between Brussels and all our members. It is not enough just to produce policy papers and go to meetings. Our members need to be much more involved in our daily activities. Together with the board and the EURASHE Secretariat, including our new Secretary-General, that was just appointed this afternoon by our General Assembly. My objective as President is to build an association that is relevant for both policymakers and our members. I hope today's workshop and our strategic review can be important steps. Good afternoon. Can be important steps towards this objective. And well, this is, for me, is my intervention, this introduction. So thank you for this opportunity. I will come back at the very end of the workshop. And I think we are now in conditions to proceed with the first panel. So I will move to my other seats here in this room. So thank you.
Thank you, Armando. Thank you, Armando. And those who are online could have seen that there are other people in the room or entering the room than two of us. In fact, there's a full room of people, but we see also that there's an ongoing chat. Good to know that there's weather discussed, but you can also raise issues about what you would like to comment. And I see that there's already some question and not answer probably. So we may probably look at later on at what people are concerned about, and please feel free to raise your questions in the questions and answers or your comments in the chat. Armando showed some of the stakeholders or partners which we were working with and hope to work further on. We have I invited several of them to share with us their views about the future potential, about the issues which Armando mentioned as the opportunities, and it was quite wide, the focus on quality professional education, addressing the skills, serving the regional communities, linking Europe and making Europe cohesive through cooperation, user-oriented research, digitalization, sustainability. There's a vast range of issues which we are facing and which we should address in the future. So in the first group, we invited or asked kindly some of the colleagues and partners who've been working with for a long time to share their views about these opportunities and challenges and their views how the collaboration with EURASHE can go further. And it's my pleasure to invite on site Richard Tufts, friend of smart specialization, but not only friend of smart specialization, it's also friend of EURASHE, I believe. Richard, would you please take the seat here? And the other person in the room who will join us now is Adam Gajek, who comes from Eurochambers. But I have to say that the link with Adam has been built through his presidency of European Students' Union. Now he's speaking with a business voice. The link to students is still kept, and I'm happy to see that Martina Dermanin, the president of European Students' Union, joined us as well. And last but not least, reflecting the lifelong learning focus, the flexibility of education and inclusion, is Brikena Chomaki from Lifelong Learning Platform. Brikena, welcome. And it's not on purpose that the gender is divided, that the ladies are on screen and gentlemen are in the room. It's just an unfortunate setting. Should we start with you, Brikena? What would be your reflection of what you would see as the potential of EURASHE? What would be your experience? Please, few words.
First, let me thank you for having me today, and hello to everyone, of course, online and on site. I would have really loved to be there, but unfortunately, due to another event that is happening tomorrow in San Remo, I'm far from Brussels. Well, I would like to also take this occasion to really thank EURASHE for the long-lasting commitment to the lifelong learning platform. For those that probably don't know the platform that much, in a very short sentence, I would say that is what we define a network of education and training providers from early childhood education to adult education. And one of the things that I think we have in common with EURASHE, and that's why EURASHE is also part of the network, is that we promote this holistic vision to education from cradle to grave, as we say. But also one of the mission of the platform is really to support more cross-sectoral cooperation, because we really believe it's important for education and training sectors to modernize through cross-sectoral fertilization, if we can say that word. And I think also the focus on the learners, and the learners and the teachers, of course. So the learner-centered approach is also another aspect that we have in common, and that the Lifelong Learning Platform tries to fight for. So maybe as you ask us to reflect a bit on the partnership, past and future, I had the pleasure to be in the last 6 years at least in contact with colleagues from EURASHE, and appreciate very much the expertise and the professional approach of EURASHE. Obviously, you are a network of professional higher education, but I must say that we have really had the support of many experts from the EURASHE network in our work in Lifelong Learning Platform, and we have been also part of your working group on lifelong learning to your and the other way, your experts have to the work learning platform, especially when it comes to recognition of prior learning validation issues, which are very key to the work. Well, I would also like to maybe congratulate the new elected people, and luckily I knew Armando already from this previous cooperation, and I'm happy to see that he took the lead. And I also would like to congratulate John for taking over. I'm really sorry that Michael, somehow you're stepping back, but we hope to see you still in this cooperation in the future. To stop on what I think EURASHE could for the future. I mean, you mentioned already inclusion and flexibility, but I think the professional higher education can play a key role when it comes to supporting the twin transition, the digital and the green transition, but doing so in a fair and just way, that we leave no one behind, because I think it's very important, because both transitions are very, very sensitive when it comes to inclusion, and we might miss the opportunity if we don't do it properly, and if we don't ensure that they are inclusive transitions. So this is one of the things that I really would advise any education training provider to really work on. And another point that you mentioned on is the flexible pathways. I think it's very important in today's society to focus on how can we make education training systems more flexible, and to maybe close on what I see also could be very important for EURASHE. I think you mentioned, Armando, the democratic and economic recovery. So I would really say that we're not talking just about growth and prosperity. We really have a democratic and an economic recovery ahead of us that we need to take care of, because people contribute to society not only through skills, not only through economic prosperity, but also by their civic rights and active participation in the democratic life of the society. So this will be my main message to start with. Sorry if I was too long. Thank you.
No, it was absolutely perfect, Rikena. Thank you. And I think we will leave a little bit space for the questions and answers at the end, probably. So, and I know that you've been also focused very much on sort of consulting the possibility of engaging civic society in all the recovery plans across Europe. And I think that would be probably something to mention later on. But you made a wonderful bridge to the next speaker, representing students. Inclusion, attention to flexibility, attention to the learners. Martina, I guess that you are in Krakow, so we would be happy to hear what is the students' view on professional higher education. What would you expect from professional higher education for the future, and how you see the potential? Thank you.
Thank you, Michal, and thank you, EURASHE, for inviting us over. I'm really sorry that I can't be there in person, and I really do hope that one time I will just drop by your office and be like, hello, can I meet all of you and have a coffee together? I think it would be really important, especially now that the pandemic is kind of easing up, to be able to meet each other. But yes, social dimension and inclusion has been one of the top priorities where we've really been collaborating on. And it makes a lot of sense. And the more we work with you, the more we understand the work you're doing through your members and through your projects, how much we can learn from what you're doing. Particularly, we've been learning a lot through Inclusively. The project that has really widened our scope on what social dimension means for professional higher education students. Not that it's too far off from that of university students. I don't believe so. I'm an applied science student myself. I'm sorry that I was not the one on the Inclusive E project, but I do see more opportunities that we can come together and work on the topic of flexible learning pathways, recognition of prior learning, and not just us two alone, but together with the lifelong learning platform. I think our voice can really be multiplied in these aspects. And it's important that we just take into account what are the initiatives where we can really influence this agenda. So hopefully, once we know really what the next stages are of the European education area, the European research area, we can come up with a way to influence that area together with our stakeholders. Not just on that though, but also with the E4. EURASHE has always been the voice there, pushing as much as ESO has in evolving sort of our usual way of thinking. And I think this is going to play a particular role when we're looking at the European standards and guidelines for quality assurance through the new projects that we've applied for as QA fit. I'm really looking forward to hopefully having that project accepted, because I think it's really going to widen our perspective on quality assurance, not just on terms of learning and teaching pedagogy, but that it broadens its definition, keeping in mind the social dimension, fundamental values, sustainability. These are all topics we cannot keep ignoring, but really need to break a bit our boundaries in understanding how to really integrate them into education. What else? I do see as well within the BFUG how much EURASHE has such a vital voice in that platform, and I do see this continuously strengthening in this regard. So I'm very excited for the next year ahead. Good luck and congratulations to all those elected, and thank you again for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Martina. We will get back to questions and answers, and also people in the room may probably raise some questions just to prove that it's not only two of us here and Boris who entered the room and Armando. Yet, going to the next partner, friend, Adam, you've seen EURASHE under surface as the student leader, but now you have been experiencing some collaboration and discussion from, say, let's say, the employer's perspective. Mm-hmm. What would you see from your new organization, your new perspective as the potential? Because so we say that we are part of higher education, which might be the closest to the world of work. Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. So first of all, hello everybody. It's great to be at a physical event for the first time in almost 2 years. Not everybody, but at least for some of us, it's a great experience. Also nice to be with two of my previous colleagues from ESO, because like ESO alumni and representatives have kind of majority in this panel. So it's also a good example of successful extracurricular activities at universities. So indeed, we've been working together with EURASHE for quite some time, and I'm very happy to know you, Michal, Arnaldo for already some time, and we've exchanged a lot. Of course, previously in my previous under my previous hat, we usually agreed on many topics. However, going to the business side, to the employer side, I discovered there's actually even more topics on which I can work with you and where we can agree from this point of view. Because of course, for businesses, for chambers of commerce, if I can analyze shortly the presentation of Arnaldo, the topic which will be of utmost importance is the topic of skills and delivery of them for the current twin transitions. And if we look at some of the recent data, for example, the recent Eurofund report on the skills shortages in Europe, we see that this problem is actually quite altered by the pandemic, because of course the skills gaps is something what we've been experiencing those already before. However, the pandemic changed the way we worked. Lots of sectors that were doing pretty well and which had skill shortages suddenly became suddenly saw like less demand. So this changed. However, the digital change, the green transition, they require lots of technology intensive work. So this means that like there is like lots of work to be done in terms of collaborating together between businesses, chambers, educational institutions, on making sure that the curricula are up to date, that we know what kind of skills will be needed in the recent future, but not only recent, because we cannot plan education thinking about 2-3 years in advance. That's not enough, right? We have to think about education in how the world is going to look like in 10 years. And this is why we should for sure do more with the data of the skills intelligence. We should invest in the AI systems in skills forecasting. And I think there's also lots of collaboration there for us. I think there is also lots of successful collaborations between chambers and professional education institutions in many countries, which is a great thing. And this is also going to be a topic of one of our next meetings in your chambers. We are going to explore a collaboration with the university alliances, European universities alliances that gather professional education institutions. So we are happy to see what kind of role for the chambers, for the businesses is there at universities, especially universities of applied sciences, because also the work-based learning is something what is very much valued by us. And also to refer to Arnaldo again, quality of this learning is very important. But also, like speaking of work-based learning and this kind of experiences, it's quite important to remember about issues such as internships and traineeships, and which are taken up by many students, and of which quality is not always at the best level. So this is also a scope, I think, where we can work together. So yeah, there's, I think, lots of things to be done, but skill shortages certainly are the main thing to overcome right now. And I'm very much looking forward to also hear what will be your ideas for the European recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. And last but not least, Richard, we met when EURASHE made a substantial step to sort of looking more into the regional agenda, seeing, well, this is probably one of the strengths of universities of applied sciences, something where we might excel, but might probably have a substantial improvement as well, and probably have also the stronger political voice, making that more recognizable as part of the mission. We following our issues. Richard has been the member of advisory committee of EURASHE for quite some time, and I have to say that it was tremendous help to us as well to widen the scope of view, and we can follow in that. Richard.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's true we've worked a long time together. So, and I thank you very much for all that collaboration we've had. I used to be the director of ERIN, that's the network of regions for research and innovation, and that we were particularly interested in working with you on this sort of place-based agenda around the sort of higher education. So, first of all, I'd just like to say that everything Armando Perez, the new president, or the re-elected president, so welcome, and was very good, and I agreed with everything you said there. And I'd just like to pick up a few of the points around some of the more place-based aspects of it on the region. First of all, I would like to refer back to the ERA, the European Research Area Communication, with the 4 priorities. And the one I want to pick up on is this translating research and innovation into the economy. And this is where I feel, this is where the role of PHE is at the vital role. This includes the skills that Adam's just built. And this is, of course, the regional economy is all about regional development. Okay, and that's where I think the key role for the PHE is. So it's a key actor in the innovation ecosystem. And we can sort of, what I would call a territorial place-based ecosystem. Obviously we mentioned triple helix, quadruple helix coming in there, but the university plays a key role with this link between the region, the university, the education, industry, and citizens increasingly, and I include students as well as our citizens in that, future citizens. Or actually not future, they are citizens. But anyway, so the role of PHE is playing a key role. And I think what it can do is it links between the EU policy. We talked about that, how you link up, and I think Amanu said, what is EU policy, particularly at the moment around the green agenda? Okay, the Green Deal is the key, it's the Lisbon agenda now for, it's the new Lisbon agenda for Europe. And that comes with it for the first time with massive funding, with the new recovery plan of 734 billion euros attached to that plan. We've never seen so much money in Europe on that level. So on one side, it links between that EU policy, but on the second level, it also links down to the region. So there's a link between the policy and on the ground. Okay, so what it's easy to have the policy, but it's going to be implemented somewhere on the ground, and this is what the university will do on that level. So it's particularly increasingly in with this urban dimension on that. And of course, coming back, that was my sort of in our friends of smart specialization, we see a key role for the universities to play a role in regional smart specialization strategies. And I think that's a very area. And that, of course, will be linking to EU policy, but also delivering the skills required for the specializations. And of course, one of the big, Adam mentioned already, the big will be green skills. But yesterday, the UK talked about its new plan for, the climate, and millions of heat pumps. And how many technicians can analyze the need for a heat pump, how many can install it, and how many lorry drivers do we need to deliver it on that level. So that is an important. So this is a key issue. And so one of the other issues that coming up now, I think, is one that shift once on smart specialization, but also there's a new thing. We're moving to a new sort of innovation. It's the challenge-driven innovation. Okay, so which is bringing us into missions. And I particularly want to bring to this sort of mission, bring in a partnership approach. And this is something that, again, the PHE should be vital, should be in the middle of this. And of course, one of the key ones is this climate neutral and smart cities. So every PHE should be in this mission. That's my view, because the mission opens up this wider partnership. That's what the Commission are looking for. Policy meets people. Is what its line is on that level. So I think that's a very important, and 100 cities will be nominated on that line. The other last point I'd like to make is it's not just about Horizon, it's also about EIT, Institute of Technology, EIC. There are new calls coming out all the time on that. And I think finally, my point is there's a geographer called Grillitsch, I don't know many people from Lund, I think he's from Lund University, he's talking about this trinity of change. So you had entrepreneurial innovation entrepreneurship, you have institutional entrepreneurship, and you also have what he calls place-based leadership. And it's putting these three tensions together that you can have this, what he calls an opportunity space. And my feeling is that the role of PHEs is to be in and start to organize this opportunity space. That's their role. He says it should have an influential role in the social fabric of place. And I think that role of PHE could be a strong role. And I think it's got a USP all over it for PHE sector. Thanks.
Thank you very much. There is a space for some questions, comments. I'm not sure if there would be any in the room. Please raise your hand, but might at least check as well the chat. I saw that there was a request for the statistics which Armando quoted. I guess that we would be able to.
What we could do is we could actually put Amanda's intervention online. I'll light it up for him.
You see, the new boy is taking over the floor. Yeah, we will put the Armando speech on the website, and you will find the reflections and the details there.
Everybody will receive the recording.
And everybody will receive the recording. Amazing. I will have a look. Yes.
Thank you.
louder, please, and would you introduce or come?
Because otherwise we might not hit the online people probably.
It's
Oui, there is a question as well.
Hello, everybody. First, let me apologize for being a little bit late. It was due to a flight delay, but I'm happy that I could anyhow join you. And I'm Boris Stanimirov, representing the University of Telecommunications and Post from Bulgaria. And now we are in the process of founding our National Association of PHEs. And listening to the discussion here in our workshop, I was thinking that it is some kind of an advantage that we are organizing ourselves in such a late stage, because what we are now doing, we were literally writing the status yesterday, and we discussed to give the PHEs, of course, full membership, but we decided to grant associate membership to business associations, chambers, and municipalities, so that we could seal the three pillars of this process and organize it in a way that will be the most effective. And I was very happy with that. With the first words that I heard here when I entered late the room was that we are on the right track. Correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you, and good luck, and good luck to the new board and to the new leadership that I have now the opportunity to meet.
Thank you, Boris. Yeah, well, that was part of my following concern. If we say that professional higher education is open to all the stakeholders, and we know that we say that and are not sure if that's fully true, how would you see potential for improvement of engagement of your specific target group, lifelong learners? Because so we focus on contact with students, but also we find that the engagement of students within the base of professional higher education with all the internships and work-based learning is sometimes more challenging. We say a lot about the partnership with businesses, and there are examples of really strong partnership with businesses, but what can we do more? And obviously the regional institutions. How would each of you have just a brief reflection on that? Should we start again with Brikenna, lifelong learners?
Yes, actually, well, thank you for the question, and I think that's what a piece that didn't mention at my first intervention. Well, I really think that professional higher education should play a role when it comes to making lifelong learning a reality, and that means improving access to different learners from different ages and social economic backgrounds. But age here is another aspect, but also their social economic background is also another one that affects the way and the motivation learners choose a particular learning environment towards another one. So I think for the professional higher education, in order to be able to accommodate new learners with different ages, I think they need to also modernize their teaching and learning, because not all learners have the same capacity, they have the same motivation, and they have very often very adverse experiences with formal education approaches, and they will probably resist to going back to some kind of a formal system, in this case, a university or schooling. So it's very important to reflect on how to adapt the teaching and learning to those learners, to diversify that approach. And I think also micro-credentials are also another aspect that comes in this development, and that's definitely the professional higher education can also improve its offer by introducing micro-credentials as well as a possibility to adult learners, for instance. And I think, yeah, what can be done? I think we are at a moment where there's a lot of rethinking, but there is also a high interest on placing education and training at the right level of the policy. So we might see how to take advantage of that by cooperating with other sectors and seeing at how to link the work of a particular education establishment with the community it lives in. And it was mentioned how important the regions are. Indeed, working with the region, working with the municipality, working with the community and the different stakeholders in the community, not only the private sector, but also NGOs. So civil society organizations can be very beneficial because they're another way of practical learning. They might not be beneficial like as of profit, but they give a lot of other skills, practical skills to learners. So that will be my quick answer to this. But I wanted to also answer to Ornella. Can I do it now or later maybe? There was a comment. No, actually, I don't have the answer, because if I had the answer to her question, we wouldn't been discussing what resilience means, because this has been a question that I see in all events in the last 1 year at least. But I know that the GRC, the Joint Research Center, while working on the key competencies for lifelong learning, in specific the Life Competence Framework and the Green Competence Framework, they're actually looking at the definition of resilience. But yeah, it's just one among many. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Brigitte. I deliberately left the chat up to John, because I think that's really the issue for the next panel, the resilience. So we would be happy to sort of take that on board in the next panel. And in fact, John comes from the JRC, so he should know all these documents by heart. So he will give you the answer. Martina, how do we engage more students in what your expectations, to listen to your expectations, to your wishes and plans?
Well, if I had to look at it, in terms of spaces to engage students, there are so many more. If you had to compare to past years, there are many different platforms where students can be engaged in different activities. Sometimes we have the problem where there are so many spaces that it's hard to actually come together and really put forward a change. So perhaps if I can just tweak the perspective on it, it's how to increase meaningful engagement, where your engagement results in something that you would want. And we've been trying to monitor this internally, and in many ways we're seeing more a push in the BFUG, in the European Higher Education area, towards monitoring work and understanding the different problems. And from our side, when we did ask our student representatives what were the issues, they can come out in many different categories. First and foremost, it's law, formal provisions that recognize the importance of having engagement of students as one of the large demographics being targeted by education. This seems natural, but it is not the case in every country that recognizes this, or that you have laws recognizing the need of diversity in education institutions, the need to protect the fundamental values. It's always important to have these written agreements there to make sure that you can hold justice in this regard. But let's say, positive situation, you have the laws there, you might end up in a situation where you don't have the resources, be it human resources or be it financial resources, to run your activities and be engaged. And this is the case from a personal side. If you have a student that is working alongside their studies and doesn't have the time to devote into the student movement, which is often underpaid volunteer job, you can't expect people who currently are trying to live in the day 2021, where in this capitalist society trying to afford everything, that they would also have the time to volunteer in student organizations. It's the reality. And apart from that, then training. training is a big issue because we're changing our representatives year after year. It's the beauty of it. It's a good thing that we have the selection process, that you're giving the chance for a new generation to come in, to take the leadership, to take the driver's seat and lead an organization. It's an incredible experience for young people. It's taken a bit for granted, I feel. So when we're talking about resilience and how we see the future, for ESU, we see resilience as having an impact in decision-making processes. And if we really target our efforts to make sure that the legitimate representatives elected by their constituencies are on those tables of decision making, then yes, I do feel like we can achieve resilience in institutions in Europe and globally.
Thanks, Martina. We'll be trying to follow some of the views. Let's see how we'll succeed. Adam, we say a lot about business engagement. Where would you see the challenges? Because it might be also the case on both sides of the table that we have to find some common language, or
I would agree that this might be often a problem, that universities and businesses speak a bit different language, and there might be a problem to find common ground there. Like even like if we look at vocabulary that we use on talking about education, it may be a bit different, but yeah, like everything depends on just like sitting together and looking for where we can help each other, and that's certainly a synergy that is profitable for both sides. From the business perspective, I think I already said that like important thing is to make sure that the programs that are at universities, at educational institutions, at schools, they reflect the current need for skills for the profession that we have now and we'll have in the future. Because like the worst system is when we actually have really requiring school programs, and then people graduate and they have to go for another training to actually be ready to take up jobs. And honestly, like if we look at many examples now, it really looks like that too often, not always, but too often. So professional education is something that is certainly valued for the businesses, because it largely works in line with what is needed in the labor market. However, there is lots of ways where this cooperation could be better. For example, in a career guidance for students who often are not really aware of what is needed at the labor market. Of course, work-based learning or internships, they help with that, but still some career guidance which is more targeted with professionals from the labor market could be done. And there is also good examples of chambers and educational institutions doing that around Europe. Of course, as I said before, skills intelligence, something will be always emphasized. There's some chambers who do skills intelligence in their countries. They collect lots of data. There's now some tries with applying artificial intelligence to make better forecasting, to be able to actually plan something. But the issue is, like there are tools, like even if we look at this, what CEDEFOP does, there is like lots of data. The issue is like, is it really used for reformation of programs? Yeah, is it used when programs are designed? And then here is, I guess, like the real problem, like as usually with policies, that there's lots of tools, resources, but there's always a problem with implementation. And concerning other things, for example, my credentials could be jointly delivered by educational institutions, and by business people, right? Because business have people who have practice, and university has a methodology to be able to convey the messages and to assess them. What is also very important, and I guess especially in the assessment, this is where universities help, is crucial for the businesses when involving in learning opportunities. And at the very end, I really believe that if we are now facing two big transitions, which require lots of knowledge and lots of practice, we can't do them separately. Like we need to have stakeholders coming together, businesses with their job opportunities, with their practice, educational institutions like yours with methodology, know-how, governments with resources, and people like with willingness to be there. And only then we are able to become a competitive continent that is actually going to turn these transitions into our advantage of tomorrow.
Thanks, Adam. Last few comments, Richard. We say that universities should be more active to show as well what's their potential, but how to do that. How would you see that from the perspective of being engaged with the regions?
Well, I'll just join exactly what Adam finished with. You need a strategy, right? That is what you say. We can't do it on our own. We need to work together. And this is where, when I talk about strategy, I would obviously, as a friend of smart specialization, talk about a smart specialization strategy. Now, every region should be developing a smart specialization for the new funding program. So if the PHE doesn't know what this smart specialization is, or haven't been engaged in it, they should find out what it is and get engaged in it and be prepared to lead it. If nobody else is, take the lead, get engaged. And I think this is the key role for the universities, because they can see the two sides. They see the policies, they know the skills. And Adam was saying, well, we've got to develop the skills, but we need to develop the skills which are the priorities of the region. Right? The skills which are priority for the city. There's no point having skills that there's no industry for. So there's obviously need a strategy, and this is where the universities have to play a key role, because they are vital in developing the strategy, they are vital in implementing the strategy. And I think that would be a key role that we would say, and this is exactly the time to do it. So don't wait 5 years, because it'll be too late. It has to be done now. So this is perfect timing for the new EURASHE program, I think. I'd just like to say hello to Dimitri, my colleague from Friends of Smart Specialization, who's quite active in sending loads of good ideas down there. So thanks very much.
Well, thank you all. I'm afraid that our time is over, and we would be still able to go on, but that would be the next workshop. So my great thanks for joining us, for coming here, but also my great personal thanks for being in touch for all those years, and really benefited from the partnership and friendship over the time, and well, we'll be in touch. Thank you a lot.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And,
Thank you.
and I guess that now it's time
Thank
to
you as
hand
well.
over. Yeah, sir.
I was just saying thank you to you. Bye.
Well, it's time to hand over not only the panel, but the entire agenda to a new gentleman. John, you are coming to a challenging job, and I wish you all the best. And it's not just about this coming panel. Take care and good luck.
Thank you.
You have amazing people around.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you again, like I said in the General Assembly, for your fantastic leadership at the Secretariat, for leading EURASHE through these difficult times in the pandemic. I can see that your friends who have been working with here in Brussels have done the same. So we've been given a good start. And it was interesting that Richard mentioned smart specialization, because one of the ideas of today was to introduce some new leadership. And so I'll introduce myself. I spent 9 years at the Joint Research Centre analysing smart specialisation strategies. And I learned during that time how important the applied education and research is for innovation in regions. So, I mean, I applied for this job. I wasn't headhunted. I applied for it, and I was fortunate to be given the job. But in fact, what I could say is I headhunted you, Armando, and Alicia, and all the board, because I did honestly see this value of PHE for smart specialization, for regional development, and in fact for a broad range of policy priorities in the EU. So that's why it's so exciting to be joining EURASHE. I say the two reasons that I see why PHE is so important to innovation and regional development is the first one, that innovation is for all regions in Europe. It's not only for the examples of, let's say, the examples often cited, Baden-Württemberg or Silicon Valley in the US. It's for all regions, and smart specialization working with structural funds, where they are mostly concentrated in Southern and Central Europe, where our members are also concentrated. So that's why smart specialization is so important for EURASHE. The second reason is that we can't separate research and education. Smart specialization, unfortunately, is a great concept, but it was put into EU policy in one thematic objective of the structural funds on research and innovation, when we know that to do this in less developed regions, you can't just fund firms to do innovation projects. You need people to be able to do it. And far too much money has been spent and wasted, quite frankly, in the cohesion policy on funding research and innovation projects when there's been no capacity, there's been no skills to do it. And that's why now we have the new objective on skills for smart specialization in the new cohesion policy. And that's where I think EURASHE has a fantastic opportunity to contribute to. Anyway, that's enough about me and smart specialization. I would like to move to the panel. The link is that smart specialization is for all regions. The RRPs are also for all regions. And we've got to be very careful that money is not spent, and we've just learned how much money there is, and we've mentioned, isn't spent only in the core parts of Europe, because we won't achieve resilience if we do that. So I'd like to start then by introducing Suzanne Konze. I'm really pleased that she's able to join us physically. She's told me it was her first physical meeting, so we are very honoured, proud, EURASHE to have that for your first meeting to be with us. Suzanne is a head of unit of country analysis in DG Education and Culture. And the other reason why we're happy to have her here physically is because all that money means there's a lot of work. And you and your team have had a lot of work, along with a lot of other people in the Commission, making sure that this money is agreed and spent well. So what I would like to ask you first, Suzanne, is, how can education skills contribute to recovery resilience, say, including the longer term perspective? Because I know that you can't tell us all the details about the plans, but let's see some general remarks.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm happy to be here and to discuss that, and also to follow a bit your discussion. And coming in with this question, I have the feeling that half of it was already answered in the first part of the discussion. Yes. So because you are very clear on the points, why skills are so important, why higher professional education is so important, and or professional higher education, the other way around, is so important, and what it can really bring to the recovery. So I think when there was a keyword in the last months, besides from, let's say, COVID and reference data to the infections, it was obviously skills, and it was coming up in lots of areas. So it's coming up in companies where they suddenly had to change the way they were working in all kinds of economical contexts, but also, and quite strongly, in education. And we always said that the last months have been a watershed event for education institutions, because they had from one minute to the other changed the way they were operating. They had to move to digital learning, they had to move to hybrid learning, with all the challenges coming with that. And so there it was clear that education institutions have to do something and have to catch up and have to change the way they are approaching. But also what was becoming more and more clear is that we need, in a certain way, a different skill set. And this is not completely entirely new. Lots of these skills we were discussing before. We were discussing before on digital education, on digital skills. We have since years the digital competence framework. But this has come even more to the forefront, and I think there is now really a boost in that. We see also in the recovery and resilience plans a boost to invest in digital education. On the one hand, in the equipment needed for doing it, but also in really improving digital skills. The other is, if you take the other part, green transition, of course, it is also not new. We have thought about the different initiatives as well, but I think also this has really come to the fore over the last 2 years and over the last years with the increasing awareness of the crisis we have on that front. So there, I think it is overall the notion we need to invest more in skills and in competences. We have to revise also the way how we are defining them, what type of competences people need. We are looking at things like, for example, one initiative we have launched now is the Coalition for Climate Education. Yeah, that's way around. So, and where we really want to look at what it is, what everybody needs to learn about, or what type of green skills everybody needs to have, and how can education institutions really instill that, and how can they also cooperate to really provide these type of skills. And that means cooperation between the different education levels as well. Coming closer to what member states have shown, let's say, in their plans. What overall I have to say, and I beg your pardon, we are not yet at the level that we can really provide you with detailed figures, because there's still a kind of overall calculation ongoing in Commission services to avoid that every sector of the Commission comes out with other self-calculated figures. So this is a little bit on the way, but what we see, we are actually quite happy. We're actually quite happy in the way and in the scale member states are thinking about education, skills development, training, also in higher education in their plans, and what they really allocate to it. And so I think in a way, the recovery and resilience plans for several countries, many countries, will be a bit of a, I don't want to call it a game changer, that's kind of an overused word, but it will be really making an impact on what is happening. And also how they invest. Maybe just to quickly recall something. So we have, it was already said, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, this part provides 675 billion over the next years, partly grants, partly in loans. And member states have submitted these plans, and and when they did so, they had to allocate in these plans, they had to allocate it to 6 strands. So this was, on the one hand, they had to say, what are you doing for green transition? What are you doing for digital transformation? For smart, sustainable and inclusive growth was one important aspect. Social and territorial cohesion, health and economic, social and institutional resilience. And this is then there also our parts on education come very strongly in the policies for the next generation, for children and youth. And what was also clear, that in these plans, 37% should, minimum 37% of the funding should go into climate related investments, and 20% in digital transition. So this were the clear overall indications in these plans. And by now we have, as Commission, we have analyzed 20 second plans and submitted draft council implementation decisions for them. And I think by today the council has adopted 19. So we are really quite advanced, and we will make quite a quick progress until the end of the year. In higher education, what we see across the board, it is different from country to country. So what I also have to say is that countries looked, of course, on their specific situation. Where do we have the biggest needs? Where do we have to invest? And in some countries, education was not the most or the biggest problem, let's say. They had other issues. There we see then a big difference in the scales per country. But overall, all countries have allocated investment to education and training, to skills development. And in higher education, we see especially exactly these things we like to see is modernization of study programs and expanding study places, looking at how to make it possible to provide broader access to higher education. So we see in several countries that they are simply planning over the next years to increase study places, but also to for example, provide grants for students, scholarships for students, to really allow more young people to enter higher education. And I think this is an important thing if we look at the need of higher skills. I'm talking too long. No, I come to an end. So there is a lot of use of funding in these areas, and this is why we're also quite happy and hopeful to see something coming up there in fostering skills, in fostering higher education, and also across the board, all higher education institutes and universities, but also applied science, polytechnics, and etc. So what we also see in investment in infrastructure and buildings. So it's really, it's a kind of a boost in that direction. And yeah, I stop here for the next question. I think I already talked too long. So
thank you. It was a great summary of what we're looking at, what's on the table. It's broad, and clearly the details are going to come out in a longer time scale. But this is Europe, and in fact, the recovery is happening across the world. We're fortunate to have this money, not all countries are. So I'd like to ask actually, well, the earlier here has come from the OECD, which includes Europe, but includes many other countries as well. So how in the OECD do you see, how does it compare with other countries in the organization?
Thank you, John, for inviting me. It feels weird to have shoes as not sleepers to talk to people. it's really a new sensation. I'm happy to be back in a phygital mode. Thank you. This is a very relevant question because what we have seen at the OECD, 37 countries, including the United States, Japan, Australia, so many different foci in the world, is this focus on entrepreneurship mobilization. It's the idea that we should focus on entrepreneurship ecosystems and generate in society this mobilization that everyone supports entrepreneurs, but not only entrepreneurs like businesses, but also entrepreneurship like a mindset. So everyone is desperate about having people going in the same direction as policies indicating it, because of course, putting all this money on the table will be effective if people will also, invest in kind, with their capabilities and with their resources to push all in the same direction. And you see that there'll be more, the connection is direct with higher education. Why that? Because instantly, at a certain point, you will need a lot of skills. Skills will represent a possibility, an opportunity, or a bottleneck, because you do not have the skills to implement the investments that you are trying to operate. And this is where University of Applied Sciences, so more in general professional higher education, can help a lot in this situation. What is important? To calibrate the kind of skills that you need, because we also live in extremely complex environment societies. Now, what's easier to say, you need nurses, but now you need mechatronic operators. What is a mechatronic operator? It's very complex to define. In a situation in which, for instance, digital skills, this point on digital skills, do you need engineers or you need everyone that is able to operate in a digital world? It's really different to the kind of approach that you might have to mainstream digital education instead of having this focus on digital professions. And while you go there and is a process of trial and error, you have to find an equilibrium between technical skills and this entrepreneurial mindset I was referring before that are important because they not only integrate the technical skills, but they provide individuals with the capacity of learning to learn, empathy, linking to others, connecting to others, be accountable, or this capacity of leadership is also a very important characteristic. And when we go and see and watch the skills bundle that are demanded by employers in the United States or in other areas where it's a little bit more measured, this, because ONET and all the data that they have, we see that employers are starting asking also this kind of horizontal transportable skills that we call an entrepreneurial mindset. So let's go back to the caveat. The caveat is we need a plan, but we also need a Napoleon-like attitude. on voit et après on s'engage et après on voit. Hein? Like Napoleon said, we start and then we see what happens. Of course, we need also a plan, but we need the flexibility to have that, and we need not only the commission that is this extremely important propeller that we have, but we need to engage with people at the micro level. So smart specialization is important because it's regions, but we have also to understand that it has become ecosystem. So sometimes you have a community and an international network at the same time. So this is a challenge. What is doing? Something that very specific that the OECD is doing, including with EURASHE, because we are very thankful for your support on that, is that we need to start with those that are suffering more for this situation. For this reason, we have this Standby Youth initiative at the OECD. So we try to help, or we try to help directly, because the OECD has been incredibly open to young people in this period. But we try to tell the businesses, the governments we operate with, pay attention in particular to young people, because together with parents of younger children, this is no, but they suffered very much for the last couple of years, and they will suffer very much because it's difficult now to enter a labor market that is very complex. So thank you for your question. This is a little bit an overview. But many pieces of this response were already provided in the previous responses, so I will stop here.
Okay. Thanks very much, Raphael, and we're very pleased to be participating in that initiative. We want to do more. The third person I'd like to ask is Robert, and we're really pleased because business is not just not just talking about getting business involved with our activities. We want you involved. We want you here. It's not easy getting into businesses mindset and letting them have the time to speak to education. So again, thanks very much for coming. And first thing I'd like to ask you is, you've heard from Commission. What's the business point of view from RRPs?
Thank you very much, John, and congratulations firstly for your appointment. We look forward to continuing the cooperation with you. Yeah, from business point of view, of course, we have a great deal of interest in the RRPs as well, through our national members, which are national employer federations in the different member states. But also, of course, there are regional branches, and indeed we talked about the regional aspects. There's also sectoral aspects that come into play as well. If we look at skills needs and how those are shaped and addressed, and there are increasingly, as we just heard, also some transversal aspects across different sectors when we look at skills. So, of course, you have some sector-specific skills, but also increasingly transferable, transversal aspects as well that are very important to address. And I think for us, if we think of the RRPs, clearly digital skills are extremely important, as previous colleagues have said, both in terms of the skills themselves, but also around the infrastructure. And clearly one of the massive lessons we've all learned from COVID is the role of digital in not only in education training, but in communication in general. But also we've seen a number of gaps when it comes to the content of curricula, but also in terms of the infrastructure. So I think for us, those are two really key aspects that that we think the RRPs can address, and which we know our members have been trying to put forward in the discussions within the national context in that regard, and which we understand are coming through and quite well represented in the plans, which we think is very, very positive. Equally, for us, STEM skills, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, are always really important skills, not only in those subject areas on their own, but also in terms of critical and systemic thinking, and also the entrepreneurial skills as well. So we think those sort of digital STEM in combination, those sets of skills are extremely important, which ones that we hope can be further developed going forward. And I think as well, I could also pick up on I think a few points that Adam touched upon in the first panel in relation to skills mismatches, labour shortages. I mean, this was really key point for us in relation to our work on education and training prior to COVID. And of course, that went off the agenda a little bit over the past year and a half, but we certainly see again those issues around mismatches and shortages coming through now in a bit of a different way as well. And there's the new dimension, as Adam also touched upon, in terms of the impact in education training, but also people's reflections and mindsets in certain sectors. It's becoming increasingly hard to attract and retain workers in certain key sectors, hotels, restaurants, catering, I think chief among them. If you see it in Belgium here, you see it in my own country, the UK as well, just as examples, but it's becoming increasingly hard to attract people to certain sectors and occupations in light of COVID. People maybe want to have more security, more job security now. What used to be a very good, flexible opportunities as they were perceived in some jobs in some sectors are now seen as more insecure. So and people are looking to maybe retrain and upskill in other sectors, other occupations that they might think give them more sort of future proofing in terms of employment and employability. And I think for us, that's also where the resilience aspect comes in terms of this upskilling, reskilling agenda. And we've got a number of initiatives at EU level that look to address this in terms of the framework for cooperation in education and training for the next period. We've got the recent council recommendation on VET, the Osnabrück declaration that also sets out the sort of strategic framework for cooperation in VET over the next 5 years. So there's a number of strategies in place. There's a number of funding streams now, and the RRPs really can help to complement what we already have through the European Social Fund, for example, through Horizon, I think was mentioned as well when we talk about innovation. So we've got a lot of tools now to draw upon, and it's really about putting in place the strategies indeed at the national, regional, sectoral level, bringing together the different players to really make those a reality.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for the two panelists for giving that introduction. We have time for questions, and I'll get back to you as well. We've got the room here I'm aware of, but I'm also aware of this kind of texting coming down here on the side, that there's lots of questions. One that I can pick out there, I think before that, well, there's two then that I found interesting. One specifically on the RRPs and the other on, let's say, the organisation of education. So on the RRPs, Suzanne, the question is it really going to make a difference? Are we not going to go back to business as usual? And how? If you could go back to that question by Dimitri Kopakis, I think. So I make sure I've got it all there. Yeah, the rhetoric about building back better. And what reforms education, let's say, can change the business as usual approach.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's something very right in this question, because money alone as doesn't change it. So money, if you just, and we always have this debate and on the question on investment education, and also in line with OECD, when we're looking at what is the best level of investment education, what is needed, there is a certain point where the more of money doesn't change necessarily the impact it has in society or the education outcomes it has. So there's a need to link reforms with that. And here I think we are also a little bit in a kind of continuous process. We had this discussion in the past. We had discussions on school education and how to improve school education, how to take, for example, whole school approaches to improve outcomes there. I think we had also lots of discussion on how to improve education at higher education level, and there probably in terms of learning, also I would assume simply that the universities for applied science were a bit more ahead than maybe the classical universities, but I don't want to really judge about that. But so there we had all these discussions already in the past. How can we make education systems more flexible, more learner oriented, more inclusive, and so on. Now I think we are after this crisis, we see two a little bit competing issues. On the one hand, we see after the lockdowns and after the closures of schools and universities, we see really the risk of a huge equity gap and really an increase of inequity in education systems, in school outcomes, and then also translated into higher education. Also there really a risk that we are doing opposite to becoming more inclusive. So there is really a kind of challenge. On the other hand, we see that exactly due to this situation, education systems try to catch up. They try to look exactly at how to improve that, how to have compensation measures, how to really combine digital education, online learning in a clever way with other forms of learning so that it helps in improvement. So I think we are a little bit really after this kind of watershed event in education. We are at the moment where it can either really change and improve to the better, or we fall back, and of course this is not a given. This is not a given which is solved by money alone. So there it's the question on how really to do better, and this I think is also a discussion among member states, also at EU level, and learning from each other and learning from good practices across the board.
Thanks. Yeah, Raphael is putting hand up there, and please answer it. But kind of also link it to the second question. There is a link there. One of the questions also coming up in the chat is about whether the COVID pandemic and the way we've had to adapt is actually going to change the whole model of higher education itself. Whether there can be a kind of gig economy in higher education, whether rather than having these sort of conservative institutions that are slow to change, whether, so it's linked to that because it's not just about money, right? It's about, if we carry on giving money to conservative institutions, nothing may change. So do we need to actually change the whole model?
Yes, thank you, because I have a personal experience I want to bring to the table, and thank you, thanks to the European Commission, because we have cooperated a long time with the European Commission in this program that was called the PHE Innovate, and the aim was on the one hand a self-assessment tool, and then the UCD was also producing country reports. These country reports were advocating for entrepreneurial education. At a certain point, after 10 case studies, we became a little bit better, and we started to put some numbers on the table. At a certain point, COVID came along, and the recovery plan, was particularly focusing on this idea of mobilizing all actors, including education. So those high education PHE Innovate reviews have been transformed with DG reform into TSI. So we are now cooperating with Italy, for instance, to help them to creating a knowledge exchange and collaboration expert, to the legal framework to really connect higher education institutions with their ecosystems. We are doing the same with Spain. We hope to do the same with Greece, and all as a legacy of these PHE Innovate reviews. So it's it's an interesting case. The second point, the change is happening also because of the demand side. The students have changed a lot after the experience they're going through. They are now much more practical in a way, so they require better skill set, but not only because they want a job, but because they want to play a role in changing society. And if we understand that and give this strength, this possibility, really we pave the way to this possibility to happen, we might really benefit from this historical change that is COVID, that will be on history books. And we will see, this is a moment in which path dependence changed a little bit, and the story of humanity evolved in a different way. And the higher education is certainly one of the components of this changing path. So this is something that we have seen from our perspective.
Okay, business now, Robert, if I ask you, I mean, what would business like to see? I mean, from the education sector in terms of reforms, would you like more short cycle? I'd say that quietly because not all our members like it. Would you like, obviously you want skills quick, but you also realize that there has to be a system in place. So how do you just square that circle?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as was touched upon the previous panel, the role of labour market skills intelligence is really important, and developing and strengthening those feedback loops in terms of, I would say, better reflecting the needs of business, of labour markets into education training curricula. I think, of course, we can't adapt at every small little change that we might see. There needs to be a structure and it needs to be programmed in a way that respects various quality assurance aspects and everything else. But I think from our point of view, we certainly see scope for furthering the role of employers, of companies in the process of curricula updating to take better account of the needs we see on the labour markets. And that's about the governance structures that we have. It's a little bit about the mindset sometimes. But I think overall it comes down to strengthening the partnerships, the cooperation that we have between the worlds of business, the worlds of education and training. The micro-credentials, the short cycle courses, absolutely. We do see good perspective in those. The micro-credentials, we're looking forward to the Commission's proposal for the Council recommendation, which is due in early December, because we do see a great deal of potential in that, in terms of the flexibility that it gives in terms of addressing the skills needs that companies have, but equally enabling learners to do additional upskilling, reskilling courses in a more flexible way. And I think, again, if we look at COVID and all the possibilities around the digital infrastructure that's come through and the pace of change that's really, in many cases, maybe forced change that in education training in terms of the delivery of courses that would have been maybe exclusively in person in the past, and what is now being done online. You can't replace everything, and we don't want to replace everything, but in terms of the possibilities that we now have with digital, it's important that we continue to tap into that, and therefore also to improve the skills, the competencies of teachers, to use those tools and sources to develop content, because I think we saw in some cases the content of curricula was lacking, not only in terms of reflecting labour market needs, but in terms of the whole learning experience. I think we could see was a bit limited sometimes now.
Well, there's something online there, Boris. This is not you, Boris. It's another Boris. Is it? It's not you. Oh, I'm
tweeting for you.
Yeah. All I can say, I'm glad it's not Boris Johnson. It's Boris. But this Boris, I've never met him, but he is saying that this is something effectively what you just outlined. That university cannot provide today.
Yeah. I think we beg to differ to an extent. I think clearly there's a difference we make when we talk about updating curricula. It's obviously faster potentially and easier if we're talking about purely vet related courses, and if we think of apprenticeships in initial vocational education and training, clearly their companies are directly involved with the education training providers in developing the curricula, also in teaching part of it in the company in terms of the workplace component. So of course it's easier in that sense for companies to be involved and to really teach the skills that they're looking for to the apprentices. I think with universities, it's true, it's more of a process, it's a longer process to update and revise curricula. But I think from our point of view, we would really like to strengthen the role of universities in the upskilling, reskilling process. And as part of that, yeah, it's maybe introducing more vocational aspects into university curricula. That is a way that I think we could, as I said, develop the partnerships, the cooperation between universities, businesses, but also try to address in a shorter time frame, in a more flexible way, some of the needs that companies have into university curricula. So it's not the impossible task. It's harder than in other areas of education and training. But as I said, from our point of view, if we can try and build in more work experience, more vocational elements into university education, into higher education, then it's a win-win.
Okay, I think I can see one person who would agree with that. And do you have a question?
Yeah,
this year, yeah?
two, if I may. So I would very much like to know, perhaps from Robert, exactly on what you were talking about now, and the difficulty to really respond to the attractiveness of STEM curricula for the students. So we've seen this year that it was no problem now to open enrollment and to enlarge enrollment numbers in the medical areas, etc., because we all faced low numbers of medical professions. But then we can open the enrollment numbers in, I don't know, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, how much we want, but we still won't get one more mechanical engineer or whatever enrolled. So what would your, let us say, advice be here? And perhaps for the other two, I would have a question. Is the pandemic an opportunity not to go back when we are recovering, but to really perhaps rethink when we're talking about green transition, digital transition, also what means growth? Does growth really mean endless growth in consuming everything, or do we have to rethink this? And is today finally the moment to do that, and can we use the pandemic to do that? Thank you.
Difficult question. Just start with the easiest one as well, because also, Robert, you did tell me that you may have to leave soon. And well, we're going to finish, by the way, everybody, soon, so don't worry. This is not going to last forever, because it could do. But just in case you do have to go, Robert, as first, what about that specific question then from Alicia?
Thank you. Yeah, it's one we're also quite preoccupied with around the attractiveness of STEM. We always had the impression that we have a shortage of STEM graduates in the EU, and we think we do. And we talk to our members and company members. It's always, as I said, the #1 skills priority. We actually looked at the data relative to Japan, to the US. We have more tertiary level STEM graduates from the EU than those two countries do. So compared internationally, we're actually not as bad as we thought, but nevertheless, we still see this particular demand. So I think for us, it's one of the things we've looked at, and there's various initiatives we've seen in some countries. I think Germany in particular is very good at this, that they have company representatives going into schools, into colleges to talk about maybe a certain element of the STEM, not to completely group them all together, of course, depending on the company and what it does. But there's a role, I think, to try and, in general, to better inform and educate about the relevance of STEM skills and what you can do with STEM skills. And that's also changing quite a lot with the digitalization process. I think in some ways there's still this perception that sort of engineering is in some ways still very sort of old-fashioned industrial competence, but mathematics is maybe not so interesting or not so sexy, but there's a lot you can do with mathematics if you look at, let's say, digital aspects around coding, programming, data analytics, data management. There's a whole range of new and emerging occupations that draw on the STEM competences and skills. And as I said before, it's also about the transversal aspect in terms of critical systemic thinking. So I think it's about trying to package up the different elements, and for sure companies need to better promote maybe why these skills are important, what sort of jobs you can do with this skill set, or picking up on one or other aspects of the STEM bracket. There's also STEAM now, the arts. I didn't include the A deliberately because it's important, but it's not so far coming through, at least to us, as being as critical as the STEM core aspect. So yeah, I think better in general, to sum up, better business engagement maybe with education training providers on why these skills are needed and in which ways, and what you can do if you study a STEM subject, the opportunities you have coming from it.
Okay, excellent. Well, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I would like to just give the last opportunity to you two, perhaps to answer that a very difficult question, if you can. Is this an opportunity for a fundamental shift in the economy and the way we think about consumption? And, you know, is it pumping all this money in from the Commission actually the best thing to do? Difficult question. So, if you can't answer it, please just say so. We don't mind.
No, yeah, I can't really answer it, but I nevertheless would like to three short points, and I try to. So first of all, it was exactly the idea of the Commission with the recovery and resilience plans to not do business as usual, but really to say it has to go into green transition, it has to go into the Green Deal. So this is the whole core of the business. I think opportunity, yes, everybody hopes that things might change, but I think we have anyway no alternative. So there is it's not the question of opportunity, it's the question of need. It's the question of need to think about a different way of organizing our life and our economy, just simply to solve pressing issues and environmental issues. And then I think there are lots of initiatives which go into this direction, like single-use plastic, like recycling approaches and so on. So I think there is definitely a strong pressure, and I think also there innovation and education is at a key central level of doing something like that.
Yeah, thank you. Very good question. The good point is that now people are listening, in part because there is money, and in part because they need to understand where to go. And this is the moment in which the OECD, exactly for the point that we assessed before, in a sense, what is business will need super skilled workers now, and you may say, but well, it's possible to do that because I need at least 3-5 years. But the point is that they never talk. So we realize at a certain point that there are zillion networks of universities, and then there is business, and then there is government, but there is not a place where they can meet together and know each other, develop common narratives, common goals. And so the OECD launched this idea to have this international network that is Entrepreneurship, Education, Collaboration, and Engagement, ECOL, to provide, we are policy dialogue, basically, facilitators, and we want to provide all these actors with a neutral space to discuss new objectives. The aim is basically to avoid that the innovation policy ends like the common agricultural policy, that the money is in the region of Paris and in Denmark. No, we don't want that for innovation. We want inclusive growth, especially because the market will not ever ask again for 10 million cars per day. They will ask for other things. It's still growing, but in another direction that will be greener, more sustainable, more inclusive again. So this is a future that we have to figure out together. And we want to contribute to offering what we do best, that is facilitating policy dialogue. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It was a good point to end on. And thank you for coming today. It was your first physical meeting, Suzanne. It was your first mission with your shoes on. So thank you for choosing EURASHE. I hope it won't be the last time we see you. And just to finish, finally, I was dreading today being the first event that I was organising with it being a hybrid event, or what do you call it?
Digital.
Digital, whatever you call it. I was dreading it, but the team did absolutely fantastic. So thank you, especially Maite, Christina, and Anna for organising today. It worked really well, and thank you to work with for the next one and going forward. Thank you, and thank you everyone for coming. Online. What I do suggest, by the way, we did have a lot of comments. Some of them were comments rather than questions. We are going to have a summary of today's event, and we'll take all those into account when we make that summary, and even name some of you, if you don't mind, with the comments that you've made. Okay, goodbye to everyone inside the space.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to meet you.
I'm sorry. Did it? Armando, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Did I? Okay. I'm very sorry. I didn't see the agenda. I'm in trouble with my president already. Okay, I will. You only have the yellow card. Relax. Wait, we're 5 minutes for the.
We still have more than 50. So please. Okay, so I will not sum up this wonderful workshop, but of course I'd like to thank you all for being here in this room, for being there in online, and we still have more than 50, which is good. We reached the 80s, around the 80s, so the fluctuation is not so bad. And a special thanks to the panelists, and of course to the moderators and to the organizers, and that includes the staff, of course. So saying this, I only use one word, a major word for me. So it's the major conclusion of this workshop, and I will address it in some different ways. And the word that I choose is inclusion. So for me, the inclusion is the basic word here. When I heard Brikena, for instance, saying that we need to modernize education, but in a way that we need to include other learners, to adapt to different learners, and specifically the lifelong learners. I also think about inclusion when we talk about the RRP, so the plans for recovery and resilience. And I do see that only 22 of the 27 are approved, I think. So we still miss 5. And some of them are from countries that are not the rich ones. So our countries, maybe with the special support, with the need for special support. And those countries include some of our members also. So some of our members are from those countries. So we need to be aware of what is happening, and maybe to do an extra effort as an organization to include also these countries, and of course link this with the smart specialization, with the regions. And it is important to, of course, to include. We heard a lot about the curricula and the curricular construction. Of course, we need to include the partners in this process. And we really do it in many, many situations. We have very good practices, and we need to share it. We need to show it. We need to talk more about this and to see how we can effectively include the partners in this process. Of course, we need also to include, in my opinion, I'm sharing it with you, to include research and innovation in the learning process. We are working, we, EURASHE, are working on this. Many institutions are working on this, but we need to do much more to include the research and innovation in the learning process. So we cannot separate, and well, most of us agree with this, we cannot separate the learning process or the education, if you want, from the research, and including always the innovation on this. Finally, about inclusion again, we need to include our partners, stakeholders, the partners that we have the pleasure to have here today, and others, to include it in our strategic process. So I think that this is a good, could be a very good illustration how to be inclusive, making this well, a strategic option that we adopt to include everybody in this important discussion that we are starting now about the strategy for the future. So that's it. The word for me is inclusion. And of course, we should not forget the flexibility, the innovation. So all the things that are related with the professional higher education, so related with EURASHE, and we need, and I think this is the most important, we need to be and to work together. So working together is the easiest way to achieve what we want to achieve. So a better world, a more sustainable one, a more, when I talk about world, I'm thinking about society. I think we need to work together in these difficult times more than ever, to work together to reach and to overcome all the problems that we are facing. And of course, with these kind of synergies, with all these connections, and with the same objectives, I think we can do it. So thank you once again for this opportunity to discuss these important issues, and hope that I do hope that in the future we will increase the number of people that are able to be in person in our future events. So thank you again. Thank you again.